You are now listening to Mark's Unexplained World by Mark the Medium, available on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Prime, Podbean and most other podcast platforms. Tonight's episode is about what happened to the Springfield Three. So it's over to you now, Mark, to explain, and I'm sure it's nothing to do with The Simpsons.
The Springfield Three is a case that involves three friends, Suzie Streeter, Stacy McCall, and Suzie Streeter's mother, Sherrill Levitt, that all disappeared on the 7th of June 1992 from Sherrill Levitt's home in Springfield, Missouri, in the United States. All the women's personal belongings, including purses, money, cars, keys, cigarettes, and the family dog, named Cinnamon, who was probably the only witness to the women's disappearance, were left behind, and the home didn't show any signs of a struggle, except for a broken porch-light globe. Also, according to law enforcement, there was a message on the answering machine which may have provided a clue as to the girls' disappearances. However, the message was inadvertently erased. Typical. In 1997, approximately 5 years after the incident, convicted kidnapper and robber Robert Craig Cox claimed that he knew the three women had been murdered and that their bodies would never be recovered. However, investigators in the case believe that Robert Cox has no credibility. As of 2024, and despite up to 5,000 tips from the public, the case of the Springfield Three remains unsolved, and neither their whereabouts nor their remains have ever been discovered. Greetings, Unexplainers. Thank you for tuning in once again and listening to this vanishing episode of Mark's Unexplained World. My name is Mark Hughes. I'm a psychic medium, a ufologist, and a true crime buff. And just to give you a better idea of who I am and what I do, every Monday night, although occasionally on a Tuesday, allowing for bank holidays and busy weekends, I do a podcast on the many wide and various subjects that fall under the Unexplained banner. These include ufology, hauntings, disasters, and all sorts of paranormal phenomena, including true crime, unsolved crime, and many missing people that often go unnoticed. So, if you are listening to this show on YouTube, please give us a review and a thumbs up, and subscribe to my channel. And if you are listening on any other podcast platforms, again, give us a like and a follow. In this episode, I'm going to tell you about the unsolved mystery as to what happened to the Springfield Three. And this week's necessary disclaimer: this story is a tale that involves missing people with a possible homicide, so may prove upsetting to some. You listen at your own discretion. Also, all opinions and comments are strictly my own, but the facts of the case remain. I also apologise if I pronounce anything incorrectly. My English, although it is my first and only language, like the weather in the UK, it tends to change every week without warning. Anyway, let us get on with the story. According to Wikipedia, the city of Springfield is the third most populous in the US state of Missouri, and is also the county seat, or otherwise known as a seat of government, of Greene County, and as the 2020 census, the city's population totalled at 169,176. It is the principal city of the Springfield metropolitan area, and it includes the counties of Christian, Dallas, Greene, Polk, and Webster. The city of Springfield sits on the Springfield Plateau of the Ozarks, which ranges from nearly level to rolling hills, with it being the second largest urban city in the area. Springfield's nicknames include the Queen City of the Ozarks, the birthplace of Route 66, as well as being called the Buckle of the Bible Belt due to its association with evangelical Christianity. The city of Springfield is also the headquarters for the American privately held sporting goods retailer Bass Pro Shops and the adjoining Wonders of Wildlife Museum and Aquarium. And in 1957, it became the home to O'Reilly Auto Parts, which began as a family business with just 13 employees. The city is also a regional centre of medical care, with the two largest hospitals, the not-for-profit healthcare centre called Cox Health and the American non-profit Catholic healthcare organisation named Mercy Healthcare, both having the city's largest number of employees. There are various stories as to the origin of the city's name, but the most common view is that it was named by migrants from Springfield, Massachusetts. One account tells that a man named James Wilson, who lived in the new settlement, offered free whiskey to anyone who would vote for the name Springfield after his hometown in Massachusetts. However, the editor of the Springfield Express, J.G. Newbill, said in the 11th of November 1881 issue that, and I quote, "It has been stated that this city got its name from the fact of a spring and field being nearby, just west of the town." So, who were the Springfield Three at the time that they disappeared? Well, first up, we have 47-year-old Sherrill Elizabeth Levitt. Sherrill Levitt was 5 feet tall, or 1.52 metres in height, weighing 110 pounds or 50 kilos, with short, light blonde hair, brown eyes and pierced ears. She worked as a cosmetologist at a local salon and was a single mother who was reportedly very close to her daughter, Suzanne Elizabeth Streeter, or just Suzie for short. Suzie Streeter herself was a 19-year-old teenager who was 5 feet 2 inches in height, or 1.57 metres, weighing 102 pounds or 46 kilos, with shoulder-length blonde hair and brown eyes. Suzie Streeter's distinguishable marks include a scar on her upper right forearm, a small mole on the left corner of her mouth, and pierced ears, with the left ear having been pierced twice. And last of all, there was Stacy Kathleen McCall. Stacy was an 18-year-old teenager who was 5 feet 3 inches in height, or 1.60 metres, and weighed 120 pounds, or 54 kilos, with long dark blonde hair and light-coloured eyes. It all started on the 6th of June 1992, when both Suzie Streeter and Stacy McCall had graduated from Kickapoo High School at the Hammond Student Center on the Missouri State University's campus. Suzie Streeter's mother, Sherrill Levitt, had attended the Hammond Student Centre arena that evening to witness her daughter's graduation. Both girls, Suzie Streeter and Stacy McCall, were last seen at around 2 a.m. the next morning on the 7th of June, when they were leaving the last of the few graduation parties that they had both attended that evening. And according to reports, both of the teenagers began partying that night with another friend, a teen graduate named Janelle Kirby, in another city in Greene County called Battlefield, before they attended various other grad parties back in their hometown of Springfield. The girls' last party was at the residence of Stacy McCall's friend's house, another teen grad called Michelle Elder. Keep up, people. However, this party was broken up by the Springfield police at around 1:50 a.m. before the trio of girls, which at this stage included Suzie Streeter, Stacy McCall and Michelle Elder, who all returned to Janelle Kirby's house back in Battlefield at around 2 a.m. And again, according to later reports, Michelle Elder stated that while at her party in Springfield, she and Stacy McCall wanted to rekindle their friendship, so the pair decided to make plans for the evening of Sunday the 8th of June. After this first short break, in part 2, we will look at the further stories surrounding the Springfield Three's disappearance.
This show is brought to you courtesy of Neil Packer and the Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Centre. Find them online at www.hauntedresearchcentre.com or at 9 to 11 Regent Street, Hinckley, LE10 1AW. Open on Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. for guided tours of the haunted rooms at just £3 per person. Booking is essential at all times, and over 16s only, please, unless accompanied by an adult. The haunted rooms are extremely haunted, and paranormal activity could, and has, taken place at any time. Some areas and particular objects or items can be quite scary and unnerving. Membership is available for £25 to qualify for selective offers. And why not download the app, available on both iOS and Android, for only $3.99, to keep up to date with what is coming up at the centre.
The original trio of girls, meaning Suzie Streeter, Stacy McCall and Michelle Elder, of course, planned to spend the night at Janelle Kirby's house, who, if you remember, was the teen grad from Battlefield in Greene County that I mentioned in part 1. But after realising that her house was too crowded with out-of-town relatives for her graduation, Suzie Streeter and Stacy McCall decided to go to 1717 East Delmar, where Suzie lived with her mother, Sherrill Levitt, and retire there for the night. And not only that, but Suzie was also very keen to show Stacy McCall her new king-sized waterbed that had recently been delivered. Janelle Kirby's mother, Kathy Kirby, later told the Springfield law enforcement that she overheard the two girls leaving while she was in bed, claiming that she also allegedly heard them talking to each other, with Suzie Streeter saying, and I quote,
"Follow me to my house."
to which Stacy McCall replied, and again I quote,
"Okay, I will."
So, knowing that both the girls had made plans for the next morning to meet Janelle Kirby and their other friends, they journeyed back to Springfield. According to reports, it is assumed that the two girls, meaning Suzie Streeter and Stacy McCall, of course, did arrive at 1717 East Delmar, meaning Sherrill Levitt's home, because their clothing, jewellery, purses and vehicles were all present at the house the next day. And again, according to reports, Sherrill Levitt was last heard from at approximately 11:15 p.m. that same night on the 6th of June, when she spoke with a friend on her phone about painting and varnishing a freestanding closet in her bedroom. The following morning, on the 7th of June, at around 9 a.m, Janelle Kirby and her boyfriend, Mike Henson, visited 1717 East Delmar after both Suzie Streeter and Stacy McCall failed to show up at her home as they had planned the previous day. Upon arriving at the East Delmar residence, Janelle Kirby found the home's front door unlocked, so they both decided to enter the house. However, upon surreptitiously looking around the place and already noticing that each of the women's cars were parked outside on the driveway, the couple, rather surprisingly, found no sign of Suzie Streeter, Stacy McCall or Sherrill Levitt in the home. The only thing that Janelle Kirby and her boyfriend Mike Henson found inside the house was Sherrill Levitt and Suzie Streeter's dog, a Yorkshire Terrier named Cinnamon, who, by all accounts, appeared to be very agitated. Just as the couple were about to leave the Delmar residence, they received a, and I quote,
"Strange and disturbing call"
on the home telephone from an unidentified male who made, and again I quote,
"sexual innuendos"
towards them. Janelle Kirby hung up the phone and then immediately received another call of a sexual nature, so she hung up the phone again. According to Janelle Kirby, she described the phone calls as very teenish in style and jarring, although she did remember Suzie Streeter complaining about frank calls at the residence since she moved in with Sherrill Levitt in the spring of 1992. And, according to David Asher, who was a member of the Springfield Police Department, he said that the calls were, and I quote, "obscene. The individual would not identify himself. They were using the F word and several other words, and then she just hung up the phone." Remember, guys, this was way back in the early 90s, and mobile phones were not as commonplace then as they are now, so most people still relied on the home phone for everyday communication. With no sign of these three women at the home, meaning Suzie Streeter, Stacy McCall and Sherrill Levitt, Janelle Kirby and her boyfriend Mike Henson decided to visit the local water park or hydroslide in Springfield, which is where her and the girls were planning to spend most of the day together, to see if they had already made it there earlier. Several hours later, one of the missing girls' mother, Janice McCall, also decided to visit 1717 East Delmar as her daughter, Stacy McCall, had failed to answer her calls all day. Janice McCall had friends who knew employees of the Hydra slide where the girls were meant to be meeting up, but became panic-struck after it was confirmed that her daughter Stacy, along with her friend Suzie Streeter, had not been seen there either, all day. Once Janice McCall was inside the Delmare residence, the family dog, named Cinnamon, came running towards her. She also noticed several other anomalies around the home, the first being that all three women's purses were sitting on Suzie Streeter's bedroom floor, with Sherrill Levitt's purse still containing a cash deposit of over $800 from her work at the salon. Janice McCall also noticed, as well in the same bedroom, that her daughter Stacy McCall's clothing was neatly folded from the night before, and that they were also the only clothes Stacy had possession of from that night. She also found some recently used makeup wipes belonging to both Suzie Streeter and Stacy McCall, along with their jewellery and keys. But not only that, she also found a packet of cigarettes that were left inside the house, which was considered unusual for Sherrill Levitt, as her family and friends often described her as a chain smoker. Next to the packet of cigarettes was an unfinished can of Coke. The lights were off in Suzie Streeter's bedroom, and her television was showing snow, meaning a static screen, suggesting they had watched a movie that night but never turned off the television when the film was over. Having taken a mental note of all the anomalies around 1717 East Delmare, Janice McCall frantically called the Springfield police from the home telephone to report the three missing women. After Janice McCall placed the call to law enforcement, while checking the phone's answering machine, she took it upon herself to then listen to the message that was showing. However, when she listened to the call, she could only describe it as, and I quote,
"A strange message."
However, unfortunately, the message was inadvertently erased, which, to be honest, was a common occurrence for most voicemails back in the 90s, especially after they had been played once. My apologies. The police were very interested in the call and message that was made to the home, as they believed it may have contained a vital clue as to what happened to the three girls. However, at the same time, the police did not believe it was connected to the prank calls that Janelle Kirby had received earlier that same day. Janice Kirby also reported to the police that the glass lampshade on the porch light belonging to the home was also shattered, although the light bulb itself was intact. Earlier in the day, when Janice's daughter, Janelle Kirby, and her boyfriend Mike Henson visited 1717 East Delmar, Mike innocently helped Janelle sweep up the broken glass from the porch, which police did later determine that doing this may have destroyed any potential evidence. But to be fair to Mike Henson, he only did this because Janelle Kirby at the time was in bare feet. Stacy McCall's parents also contacted the police about their daughter's disappearance from Sherrill Levitt's home at 1717 East Delmar, after more than 16 hours after the women were last seen, with other worried family and friends calling in and visiting the house the next day. Unfortunately, though, according to the Springfield police, this meant that the house had been corrupted by 10 to 20 people who visited the Levitt home, destroying any potential crime scene. Upon law enforcement's arrival at the home, the scene showed no signs of a struggle except for an awkwardly bent window blind and the aforementioned shattered porch light. The police also noted that Sherrill Levitt's bed looked like it had been slept in and, like Janelle Kirby, her boyfriend Mike Henson and her mother Janice, they too noticed that all the missing girl's personal property was left behind. And, according to reports, Sherrill Levitt had a doctor's appointment scheduled for Monday the 8th of June, Stacy McCall was scheduled to work that day as well, and Suzie Streeter was scheduled to go back to work on the Tuesday of the 9th of June at 4 p.m. But none of the three women would arrive for these appointments. After this second short break, in part 3, we will look at the investigation and the possible suspects behind the three girls' disappearances.
Fright Nights was established in 1999 as the first company in the world to offer overnight ghost hunt experiences to the general public, pioneering paranormal events since the last century. Fright Nights operate at hundreds of the UK's most haunted and exclusive venues. All events have their own team of experienced paranormal investigators, mediums and psychics. They have a VIP members club for regular returning guests, offering loyalty discounts and exclusive invitation-only events. They can also host private events for your family and friends. You can contact them on 07 852 998 628 or email them at office@frightnights.co.uk. Or take a look at their website at www.frightnights.co.uk, where you can see the many locations they investigate and learn about them and the opportunities they have available. Hundreds of ghost hunters join Fright Nights every month for the most thrilling ghost hunting experiences they'll never forget. If you haven't been on a ghost hunt before, then why not join them to see what it's all about? Why not visit their social media sites for up-to-date information on all the places they visit and to see what's coming up in the future? They look forward to seeing you all soon. Fright Nights Ghost Hunting Events. Remember, only the original will do.
On the 31st of December 1992, approximately 6 months after the three girls' disappearance, a man phoned the America's Most Wanted hotline with information regarding the three women's disappearances. However, unfortunately, the call was disconnected when the switchboard operator attempted to link up with the Springfield Three's investigations. The Springfield police said that the caller had, and I quote, prime knowledge of the abductions, and so they publicly appealed for the man to contact them again, but unfortunately he never did. On an interesting side note, America's Most Wanted, which is often abbreviated as AMW, is an American television program whose first run of TV shows was produced by 20th Century Television and the second run under the Fox Alternative Entertainment Division of Fox Corporation, which on the 2nd of May 2008, the program's website announced its 1,000th criminal capture. At the time of its cancellation by the Fox Network Television, in June 2011, it was the longest-running programme in the network's history, with 24 seasons, a mark since surpassed by The Simpsons, although AMW was revived 10 years later. The show featured reenactments of dangerous fugitives that were portrayed by actors intersped with on-camera interviews and the American television show host John Walsh in a voice-over narration. Each episode was also featured photographs of dangerous fugitives, as well as a toll-free hotline number where viewers who were allowed to remain anonymous could give information regarding each case. The show itself, overall at the time, had a significant impact on law enforcement and crime prevention. Another tip that investigators received, although I can't confirm the source, was that the 3 women's bodies were buried in the foundations of the South Parking garage at Cox Hospital in Springfield. In 2007, a crime reporter named Kathy Baird invited a mechanical engineer named Rick Norland to scan the corner of the South Parking garage with ground-penetrating radar. Rick Norland did in fact find 3 anomalies buried in the ground that were roughly the same size and were indeed consistent with a grave site location, with 2 of the anomalies buried parallel to each other and the other one being buried perpendicular. However, a Springfield Police Department spokesperson, a Ms. Lisa Cox, claimed that the person who reported the tip, and I quote,
provided no evidence or logical reasoning behind this theory at that time or since then.
Lisa Cox also said that the South Parking garage began construction in the September of 1993, which is over a year after the 3 girls disappeared. Lisa Cox continues, and I quote,
digging up the area and subsequently reconstructing this structure would be extremely costly, and without any reasonable belief that the bodies could be located here, it is illogical to do so. And for those reasons, SPD does not intend to. Investigators have determined that this lead is not to be credible.
Also, the former assistant at the Greene County Prosecutor's Office, a Mr. Darrell Moore, said that the tip of the South Parking garage came from someone who either, and I quote, claimed to be a psychic or claimed to have a dream or vision about the case, which no doubt at the time meant that the tip lost all credibility. One of the persons of interest in the case was a gentleman named Dustin Reckler, who was in fact a former boyfriend of one of the missing girls, Suzie Streeter. You see, a few months before the 3 women vanished, Dustin Reckler broke into a Springfield mausoleum and stole $30 worth of gold fillings from one of the skulls. And one of the main reasons why the police looked at Dustin Reckler was because Suzie Streeter had given investigators a statement about the mausoleum break-in and was rumoured to be a probable witness against Dustin Reckler in court. And from all accounts, Dustin Reckler and his 2 accomplices that helped with the mausoleum robbery were known to be together and in the area the night that the 3 women went missing. Another suspect was Robert Craig Cox, who was imprisoned in Texas as a convicted kidnapper and robber. Robert Cox not only told journalists that he knew the Springfield Three had been murdered and buried, but he also claimed that their bodies would never be recovered. In 1992, Robert Cox had been living in Springfield and, when interviewed back then, had told the Springfield investigators that he was with his girlfriend at church the morning after the three women disappeared, which his girlfriend corroborated. However, for whatever reason, his girlfriend then later recanted her statement and told law enforcement that Robert Cox had asked her to corroborate. Robert Cox also told law enforcement that he was at the home of his parents the night that the three girls disappeared, to which his parents did confirm his alibi. It was at this stage that the authorities were uncertain if Robert Cox was indeed involved in the Springfield Three case, or if he was just seeking recognition for the alleged murders by issuing false statements. On another interesting side note here, Robert Craig Fox is a dishonourably discharged Army veteran, who had a history of violence and run-ins with the law. While serving in the army, Robert Cox pleaded guilty to kidnapping and assault with a deadly weapon in California, after which he was sentenced to 9 years in prison and dishonourably discharged from the army, which is kind of ironic really, because in 1979 he was named Soldier of the Year. Robert Cox was also a suspect in the death of a 19-year-old Sharon Zellers, who disappeared after leaving work at Walt Disney World on the 30th of December 1978. Sharon Zellers' badly beaten body was found several days later near Orlando, Florida, in Orange Grove, where, coincidentally, Robert Cox was visiting his parents and as a result became a suspect because he was staying in a motel close to the Grove where the murder was committed. Hospital staff at the time did report Robert Cox to authorities because part of his tongue had been bitten off by someone else, despite him claiming that he had bit off his own tongue. A case against Robert Cox with Sharon Zeller's murder was never pursued by the Florida authorities. This was simply due to lack of evidence, so the case went unsolved for a decade. However, after Robert Cox was released from prison in California in 1986, the Florida authorities finally charged Robert Cox with Sharon Zeller's murder, and he was convicted and sentenced to death in 1988. But, although in a rare ruling, the Florida Supreme Court overturned the murder conviction and death sentence, arguing that prosecutors only had circumstantial evidence which was not enough to convict in a criminal case. Robert Cox was released in 1989 and he then moved to Springfield, Missouri. Although he was questioned in the disappearance of the three women, Robert Cox has never admitted to any wrongdoing, and the authorities have found no evidence linking him to their disappearance. However, having said that, Robert Cox has also stated to the authorities and to journalists that he would disclose what happened to the three women after his mother has died. The case of the Springfield Three has featured on shows such as 48 Hours, America's Most Wanted, and the Discovery Channel's documentary series Disappeared. In the June of 1997, a bench was dedicated to the women inside the Victims' Memorial Garden in Springfield's Phelps Grove Park. Sherrill Levitt and her daughter Suzie Streeter were declared legally dead in 1997. However, their case files are still officially filed under missing. And despite upwards of 5,000 tips from the public, as of 2024, the case of the Springfield Three remains unsolved.
all for taking the time out to listen to this episode of Mark's Unexplained World. In our next episode, show number 122, we are going to be looking at the Colt clan incest. The Colt family incest case concerns an Australian family discovered in 2012 to have been engaging in 4 generations of incest that began with a couple known as Tim and June Colt, who emigrated from New Zealand in the 1970s. They all lived on a farm near Borrowara in New South Wales. The family members' true identities remain unknown to the public, so the name Colt is a pseudonym used by New South Wales courts and government agencies.
This show was written and researched by myself, Mark Hughes, and proofread and edited by Linda Hughes. As usual, the pronunciations of all the names and places was mine. The actors in this episode were Mark Hughes, Linda Hughes and Denise Poolar, with special thanks to Neil Packer and the staff at the Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Centre in Hinckley, and of course a big thank you to everyone for listening. We never run out of ideas here at the office for Mark's Unexplained World podcast, but if you know of any other intriguing stories under the Unexplained banner, including ufology, hauntings, disasters, and any other sort of paranormal phenomena, including true crime, unsolved crime, and missing people, just drop me a direct message and I will see what I can do. I will also include the name of the person who suggested the idea in the end credits of the podcast. And again, just to add, if you are listening to this show on YouTube, please give us a review and a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And if you are listening on any other podcast platforms, again, give us a like and a follow. I thank you in advance. Mark's Unexplained World, because there's more to the paranormal than meets the third eye. And remember guys, keep it real, because being real is better than being perfect. This show and all its contents are covered by basic copyright of Mark the Medium.